Hi, welcome to my video on the conjugate of complex numbers, conjugates. Recall, a conjugate of an irrational number is one whose products is a rational number. Examples, root 3 is irrational. Its conjugate is root 3 because the product is root 3 times root 3, which is root 9, which gives me 3. Or any square root multiplied by itself gives you that number. And the conjugate of 1 plus root 7 is 1 minus root 7. Notice when you do a conjugate, you only change the second sign, not the first. If you change both of them, you're doing opposites. And the product of 1 plus root 7 times 1 minus root 7 gives you, and if you do first FOIL, first outside, inside, last, and negative times the positive times the negative is a negative, and root 7 times root 7 is 7, so the root 7's cancel out, and you get a negative 6. So conjugates. The conjugate of a complex number is the one whose product is a real number. So notice now that if you have a complex number, then its conjugate will give you a real number. So if you have a 2i, its conjugate is a negative 2i. And when you multiply, notice I changed the sign, it's negative 2i, and the product is 2i times negative 2i, and that gives a negative 4i squared. And notice that a negative 4i squared is negative 1, so you come up with a positive 4. So notice the imaginary number, complex number, comes up with a real number called 4. And complex number is negative 3i, so its conjugate is 3i. And the product of 3i times, negative 3i times 3i is negative 9i squared. And again, I squared is negative 1. 9 times negative 1 is 9. So notice you have, this is a monomial, so you change the sign, and there's a plus, there's a minus, there's a minus, there's a plus. But you got to have an I, because I times I is I squared. And what about the conjugate of 1 plus 4i? Well, the conjugate is 1 minus 4i. Very similar to 1 plus root 7. Conjugate is 1 minus root 7. So the same here. Notice we change the second one to the opposite. So when we take 1 plus 4i and multiply by 1 minus 4i, they're conjugates of each other. What we get is first 1, outside, negative 4, inside, 4i, and last is a negative 16i squared, and they cancel out. And notice that's a negative 16. I squared is negative 1, so it's 1 plus 16, which gives me 17. So a complex number becomes 17 when you multiply by its conjugate. The conjugate of a negative 2 minus I is a negative 2 plus I. Again, we change the second sign, not the first. And the product of a negative 2 minus I times negative 2 plus I is first is 4, outside, oops, we'll go way over here, negative 2i, inside, negative I times negative 2 is positive 2i, and negative I times positive I is a negative I squared. And notice the middle terms cancel out, and that becomes 4 plus 1, which is 5. Notice you have a negative I squared, so this I squared is negative 1, so the negative of a negative is a positive. And number, or E, as negative 3 plus 2i is negative 3 minus 2i conjugate. And what is the product? Well, the product should give me, if I do it right, the product should give me a real number. Because these are complex numbers. This is the real part, this is the imaginary part. So first 9, outside is positive 6i, inside negative 6i, last 2i times negative 2i is negative 4i squared. Again, the middle terms cancels out, telling me I got it done right. And that's a negative 4i squared. I squared is negative 1, so that gives me a positive 4, and it gives me a 13. Complex numbers multiplied. These two are conjugates of each other, and therefore it gives me a real number. Okay, let's continue. And knowing that, again, in conjugates, if it's a monomial, you just change the sign. And if it's a binomial, we change the sign of the last term, not the first one. State the conjugate of each. Complex number is I, so its conjugate is negative I. The conjugate of a negative 4i is a positive 4i. The conjugate of 4 plus 2i is 4 minus 2i. Again, we change the second, not the first. 4 didn't change. And the conjugate of number 4 is a negative a half minus 5i. You don't change the first one, you change the second one. Number 5, 3 minus 6i, the conjugate is 3 plus 6i. The conjugate of a half I is the negative a half I. And the conjugate of negative 10 minus 3i is negative 10 plus 3i. The conjugate of a negative 6 plus 9i is negative 6 minus 9i. Again, in a monomial, just change the sign. And when you have complex numbers, like this is imaginary number, pure imaginary, so just change the sign. You change the sign. Right here is imaginary number, so you change the sign. But if you have a binomial, you change the second sign, not the first. Change the second one. So when you multiply, your middle terms will add up to give you 0 and cancel out. If you like my video, click the like button, the subscribe button, the notification bell, because there's more videos coming. Visit my website at www.mathfullyexplained.com to find more information about me, my videos, and the content. And that's the content on my YouTube channel called Math Fully Explained. Thank you for viewing my video. Bye-bye.